say they're incapable, but generally the view that's been put forward is that you don't necessarily count poor quality homes as being part of your supply. It's been a critique.
Where on earth have you got that from? There's been no, when we look at the existing amount of supply in this borough, there is no assessment by which the council has sought to exclude from the existing amount of care home beds in Basildon those which are not up to scratch. If you did that, you'd be knocking out at least a third of them, because we know that a third of the beds aren't good or outstanding CQC rated.
So I'll re-answer that question. For 7.7, at the time that the care home was demolished, we considered that it did not fully function.
Right, but it was almost half occupied. There's no basis for forgetting about, if you like, in the calculations, the fact that you're actually losing more beds than you're gaining.
That's true.
Anyway, so the inspection in the end can decide what to do with all of this information. But the truth be told, if he decides to have an eye on supply, which is to say how many bed spaces, by how many bed spaces has the stock in Basildon actually increased? The answer is, as it's 7.6.6 of Mr. Tennant's evidence, 45 units, 45 bed spaces.
That's correct.
So the question for him is whether he wants to forget about the ones that were lost or not.
I would say whether you consider that one. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Right. We agree as a matter of fact they were lost. You're asking him essentially to disregard that for reasons that you have explained. Okay. Right. That's that. If he does what Mr. Tennant asks him to do, now this is an if, because you think he should forget about the undersupply, the net losses. But if he has regard to the net provision of bed spaces, then even on your approach to need, the council cannot demonstrate anything like enough care beds at the moment. Because as he says, you're talking about a 2.37 year supply based on your own need figures. This is all on, sorry, this is all on page 62.
This is the take-home 5.
Exactly, yeah. You're talking about a shortfall. Now, this is assuming you're right on need. We don't accept the right on need, obviously. But if you are right on need, if the inspector has regard to the net increase in bed spaces rather than the gross increase in bed spaces, there's a shortfall.
I'd agree with that.
Okay. All right. We're almost there. Now, you say, and you've continued to say that, well, we've not stopped there. We've talked to Essex, we've called people up, we've tried to establish what the vacancies look like. And in your recent ring around, you found 60 bed spaces, which were available. I'm summarising what you said in chief.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have an analysis of those 60 beds that you say were available, of the proportion which were either good or outstanding CQC rated?
At the time of the call, and bear in mind this is a one moment in time on the 30th of November.
Yeah.
At that time, 5 of the vacant rooms did not have ensuite facilities.
I wasn't asking about ensuite.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I think.
No, have a listen. So the question was, it's all good to know which ones have toilets, but of the 60 units, 60 bed spaces, which you say were available at the end of November, what proportion of those 60 were in care homes that were either good or outstanding CQC rated?
At the time of the call, there were 32 bed spaces which were in facilities which were rated as requires improvements.
Which means the others presumably
were at either good or outstanding.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, there are 66 units in the newly built Brookline care home which hasn't yet been rated.
You said that. Right, so most, but only just, of the 60 that you've identified require improvement. 32 out of 60,
Just about half, yes.
about half. Okay. We know that one of Essex's goals is to achieve an increase in the proportion of care homes that are either good or outstanding, unsurprisingly. We know that, as you said in your evidence in chief, poor quality care homes may well not be, you've repeated it to, when you've answered my questions, may not be occupied to capacity. Yeah.
I would, whereas that as a poor quality care home does not necessarily attract someone who needs the care home to leave the home and go into.
Yeah, but the point is that if we're talking about that 60, half of them are actually in poor care homes. We cannot, can we, equate the fact that you've got 60 bed spaces that you've identified in Basildon with some sort of lack of wider demand. Half of them are in facilities that are not up to scratch, aren't even good, let alone outstanding.
I would say that we still have to take into account, there's about 90, including the new scheme.
Yeah.
We're still talking 96.
Well,
Wrong math.
yeah.
On one given day available for anyone seeking on that one given day. Obviously, care homes are constantly moving.
Yeah. But this is the problem, and you're in an area where 2/3 of, that's right. What did you say? I'm sorry, the proportion of good and outstanding bed space as well, is it 66% or something, 67%? Across Basildon as a whole, 67%. So 2/3 of the bed spaces in Basildon as a whole are good or outstanding, which means there's 1/3 of the bed spaces in Basildon which aren't.
In June, at the time that was registered.
Yeah, that's the most recent data that we've got, isn't it?
Yes, not including the newly opening care home.
Yeah, I know, that's the most recent data we've got, isn't it? So we cannot assume, can we, that the fact that you've got, say, 60 bed spaces showing on a particular day equates to some sort of lack of demand, because the vacancies do not account for the extent of demand for higher quality facilities.
I would say there's still, we're still showing a vacancy rate in high quality facilities.
A vacancy rate, but there's always going to be a vacancy
We're still
rate.
saying about half of the vacancies that were available.
It's tiny. Come on, I mean, it's tiny. We're talking about needs. Well, okay, we're talking about needs in the thousands. Anyway, all right. So you say that a vacancy rate of the extent, to the extent that you've demonstrated one, shows to you a lack of demand in this area for high quality facilities.
I wouldn't say that there is a lack of demand for higher quality facilities. I would reword that as there is not an unmet demand for high. Sorry, this is probably not a very clear answer.
Go on.
I would say that at this time we do not have evidence that there is a lack of that there is an unmet demand for care homes resulting from poor quality facilities.
Just say it one more time. No evidence of, go on.
I would say at the moment we do not have evidence that there is an unmet demand for care homes which is not being met because of the quality of the available vacant facilities.
Do you say that there's an unmet demand for care homes at all? You say that the full needs for care homes are being met.
I would say there's sufficient vacancies in the current available schemes to meet the current needs in full. That's
what about future needs?
Current need. And I would say the future needs, there are 2 schemes in the pipeline which will meet the immediate future needs over the next few years.
What about beyond that?
Potentially there may be a need in the future beyond that.
So there will be a need. I mean, we're talking about an ageing population that's growing. I mean, there's going to be needs in the future.
We haven't looked beyond 5 years. We would be looking to meet the future needs through the national master plan.
Right. And your case again on the fact and the idea that you can accommodate your needs over the next 5 years is predicated on 19 bed spaces a year.
That's predicated on the two granted consents.
That's the supply,
The
but the
supply.
requirement side of it is
Against
measured against.
against the requirement of an average of 19.
Yeah, exactly. We're saying the same thing. It's 19 a year over the next 5 years.
Yes.
Okay, so it all comes back to that then. You rely on two commissions, as you've said, to give you a pipeline of 156, which is the let's just get this right. Pips Hill Road, which is 80, and Fairview, which is 76, adding up to 156.
Yes.
So the question, if the inspector is with you on 19 bed spaces a year, the question becomes whether he decides to recognise the net loss in bed spaces or to ignore it.
I'd say that's a critical point.
Okay. All right. So we've got identified what the issues are. Number one is 19 per year, need or not. And number two, if it is 19 a year, then does he ignore net losses? All right. And just last thing, because I've just done about all this stuff. Last thing. Called document 11.04, there's one more appeal decision, which is actually Pips Hill Road. Take a moment, of course. Now, you'll remember this, I imagine. This was a hearing in the back end of last year. And if we turn to page 11, you were one of the team of 3 who were giving evidence for the local planning authority.
Yes.
And you were presumably giving evidence on similar topics to those on which you're giving evidence today.
Yes.
This hearing happened in October.
With the proviso at that point, we considered that we did have.
Yes. No, I know. That's the twist, isn't it? So this was as at October of 22. You were telling the inspector. If you turn to page 6.
Yes. Sorry, I'm at page 6.
Get there. Para 36. You were saying there was currently a substantial unmet need for care beds. Over 60% of the borough located in the Greenbelt. Currently no strategy to deliver sites for care homes outside the Greenbelt. New local plan anticipated to be adopted by 2027. Unaware of suitable sites within the borough that come forward to meet the demand.
At that point, without that consent being
Yeah.
granted, and also the other consent wasn't granted at that point either.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at that point, we didn't have 2 consents in the pipeline.
No, this just helps the inspector to understand how things have, where your case has gone. So as at October of last year, your position substantial unmet demand.
Yes.
Everything has changed in your view because of the grant of the 2 consents that we've been over together, which add up to 156 care beds.
Yes.
But all the rest of it, sorry.
In context of us saying our demand is 19.
Exactly, of course, because if the demand's higher, then that 156 doesn't scratch the sides. But in the context of your 19 a year, then this is what you're saying. Substantial unmet demand last year, but 2 consents have solved it, essentially.
Given the scale of demand.
Yeah, given what you consider the scale
over the next 5 years.
But there remains no strategy to deliver sites for care homes outside the Greenbelt.
Not at this time. That would be something we would be developing for the
And the council's currently unaware, I'm just reading out things from the decision, currently unaware of any suitable sites within the borough that could come forward to meet the demand. We've got 2 that you rely on, but if the inspector decides that the need is considerably higher than that, as adopting a shop at approach, the council's not got a strategy to meet that need.
No.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. Those are all questions, Sarah, and cross-examination.
Just looking for my microphone because it's in the room. Thank you very much for that. I don't have any questions, so I'll pass over to Mr Atkinson, see whether he has.
Thank you, just a handful, thank you, oh yeah, I was saying. When you were asked about market housing, Mr. Richardson, remember at the beginning of your
Yes.
cross-examination, and you said, you were taken to the it was the housing delivery test statement,
The action plan,
the action plan,
yes.
and you agreed with my learned friend that the shortfall is not likely to change without a new local plan.
We'd agree it's not likely to change significantly, yeah.
Yeah, and you said there were some other
There are
actions which the council has taken, and whilst you accept that the local plan is the most significant of those, I just wondered what those other actions were, because you didn't get.
If you bear with me a moment, I'm just going to revert back to the action plan.